Welcome to join us in today's last session. This is the 9th keynote speech of this conference. The keynote speech will be presented by Professor Albert Ziegler from University of Erlangen, Nuremberg, Germany. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. And the title of the speech is Environmental Boosters of Talent Development. The moderator for this session is Professor Yu Xiaoping from National Taiwan Normal University. She is from the Department of Special Education. Her research interests focus on gifted females, career development of gifted students, and gifted curriculum design. Professor Yu is a member of the advisory board of gifted education in many cities and counties in Taiwan. Currently, Professor Yu is the president of the Chinese Association of Gifted Education. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Professor Yu Xiaoping.
Thank you. Welcome this section. Let me introduce this section's keynote speaker, Professor Albert Ziegler. Professor Albert Ziegler is a chair professor of educational psychology and research and excellence at the University of Erlangen, Nuremberg, in Germany, and he is the founding director of the statewide counseling and research center for the gifted. He has published almost 450 books, chapters, and articles in the fields of talent development and educational psychology. He developed the top model of giftedness, which promotes a systemic conception of giftedness. In his research, his main interests are learning resources and effective learning environment, self-regulated learning, mentoring and gifted identification. And presently, he serves as the Secretary General of the International Research Association for Talent Development and Excellence, as Vice President of European Council for High Ability. And he is a founding chairman of the European Talent Support Network and was 2017 appointed director at the World Giftedness Center in Dubai. So please join me to welcome Professor Albert Ziegler.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the honorable invitation. I would love to have joined you in Taiwan today, but as you all know, it was not possible. So my name is Albert Ziegler, Xiaoping. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, introduced me very generously. I am head of the Department of Educational Psychology and Research on Excellence at my university, and I'm interested in all types of excellence, whether it is excellence in the academic field, mathematics, physics, languages, or in the arts, or in sports, economy, whatever. And of course, I'm very much interested, how can the talents develop their talent? How is this possible? And we have many answers in science, but what I think is that the role of the environment had been neglected so far. Let me start with 3 preliminary remarks to my presentation this morning regarding the objective of my presentation, about this neglected factor environment, and about the theoretical approach. First of all, gifted education can have many objectives, but you will find always either the left one, curative, or the right one, talent development. Curative means, of course, also gifted students might need our help. For example, if they are twice exceptional, underachievements, if they develop some mental health problems, if they are rejected by their peers and so on, then they need our help. In this presentation, in my presentation, I will focus on the other aspect, on talent development. And this means all the learning pathway from the beginner, from the first learning steps, and interest formation. When the kids are maybe 6 to 8 years old, then somebody recognizes usually their talents. And the individualized learning activities are specially designed by teacher, mentor, or coach to improve specific aspects of an individual's performance. We are now talking about maybe 10,000 hours of really intentional, effortful learning until somebody becomes an expert. And these are persons who exhibit durable and not only singular, extraordinary achievements. And I'm sure you all want to know, how is this possible that a talent makes this way to the top and fully taps into his potential? My second preliminary remark concerns the environment. I love this quotation by Subotnik, Olszewski, Kubilius, and Frank Worrell. Outstanding human performance continues to intrigue experts and the public. However, the focus is often on the individual performer or producer, with scant or little attention given to the additive part played by circumstances and contents. And when you look at these photos here, you can imagine that the environment shapes a lot what will become to these kids. Maybe they are all of the same talent, but environment will boost them in very different directions or even hinder them. My third theoretical remark, third preliminary remark is about my theoretical approach. It's systems theory. What is a system? Here's a very common definition. A system in talent development consists of elements that pool their resources and capabilities together to create a new, more complex system which offers more functionality and performance than simply the sum of the constituent elements. You might ask, what are the elements? Additionally, we looked at the talent in the center, and then we had a very vague, unclear notion of the resources around this talent. But of course, we can also refocus ourselves. For example, one part of the resources in the environment of a talent is the family of the talent. We can also look at the system of the talent and the family and ask, how do they make use of which resources around them? We can also have another systemic look and can, for example, look at the talent and the family plus the teacher. How can they make use of whatever resources in the environment? We will mainly focus in this presentation on talents and their resources. And our interest is, can we somehow characterize or categorize these resources? Which resources around an individual are really important? And if you are a parent, if you are a teacher, I'm sure you are interested in this question. But this is not the whole game. There's another very important aspect. We can also ask, what capabilities must talents or subsystems possess in order to fully utilize these resources? So it's not only enough that you have the resources around you, you must also access and use them in a proper way. And now I come to my presentation. After these preliminary remarks, I have indeed 5 points to share with you. My first point is the environment in giftedness research, in traditional gifted research. How did we approach it? I will show you some empirical findings just to prove to you how important the environment is. And I will share with you an own first attempt. We call these concepts sociotopes. I will explain it later what is meant by it. I will also share with you some empirical study which shows to you how important it is to categorize the environment. And then I will share with you an improvement of this sociotope approach, and in the very end I will finish with a short summary of the main points. But let's start with the first point, gifted environments, or the role of environment so far in giftedness research. And my first point is, even for decades now, we have realized that looking at traits, at the person only, is not enough. This is a list from a book. It's common, but it's very old-fashioned. And you see this book is in the 7th edition already. And it lists traits of gifted students. For example, in the left column, the first trait, a keen power of abstraction, an interest in problem solving and applying concepts. There are other traits at the cognitive field, the creative field, affective field, behavioral field. When you look at the very last in the behavioral field, it says they have a volatile temper, especially related to perceptions of failure. Frankly, this is all not true. What is written here, you find some little small correlations, not even moderate correlations, between IQ and these traits, and these are mainly American findings, and it's not international here, and it's simply not enough to look at these traits and conceptions of giftedness. The theories have now for a longer time recognized it, that you cannot say without taking a look at the context that this individual, this gifted individual, has just this package of traits listed here. Indeed, all modern models of giftedness include somehow the environment in the model of giftedness. I show you just some examples, and you see here the date, 2003. This is the Tenenbaum's model, and he has also as one factor in his model environmental influences. So it's an integral part of this theory. Look here, for example, another very famous model. This is the model by Francois Garnier. And you see here, he's also talking about environment, the environment. He calls it the environmental catalysts. And it is also a substantial part of his model. We can look at any other model. This is, for example, the model by Kurt Heller. And he also mentions the environment as an integral factor of giftedness. So I will show you also with some questions that it is not enough to just look at traits. For example, what are the chances that students from middle school number 8 in Beijing win gold medals at the International Mathematics Olympiad? We cannot simply identify the giftedness of the students of this school and answer the question. We have also to look at this special school. What are they teaching? How are they teaching? What is the didactics at this school? Or, for example, which of the public school systems of these two German federal states, provinces of Bavaria and Saxony, is more effective with regard to gifted education? We cannot simply identify all the gifted students and look at their results. We have to analyze the system here. Or are the chances greater that a woman from Taiwan or any from the United Kingdom or any other country will win the Nobel Prize in physics? It makes no sense to analyze all the individuals of this country, all the women in this country to answer this question. We have to analyze the country. So what we are doing when we analyze the environment is continuing an old idea. This idea was, as far as I know, first invented by Bishop, and he just analyzed the other way around. He didn't analyze the gifted students, but he started from the gifted students and looked at their environment, in particular at their teachers. And he finds that these teachers shared some characteristics. For example, they were mature and experienced. They were all mentally superior, the teachers of these gifted. Or when you look at number 8, they were more interested in their students. Or number 14, they were more supportive of special educational provisions for gifted students, and so on. So there was not only a difference between the gifted students and the other average students, but also a difference between the environment of the gifted students and the environment of the other students. And why should we pay attention to the environment? Also, some colleagues already experimented with similar concepts. I will give you just 1 or 2 examples. Jonathan Plucker, who was also a keynote speaker at this conference, spoke about smart contexts. So very powerful environments that boost talent development. Others talked already and used the term already of gifted environments or talent environments. And I would suggest, we suggested the term learning social torps. I will explain it later. So colleagues already felt it's not enough to just analyze the gifted students. We need also to have a proper idea of their environments, and maybe it's just the other way around. Not the gifted students are searching for environments, but an environment produces the gifted students. And very likely it's of course transactional and works in both directions. So let's look at some scattered empirical findings. I'm interested, for example, in the results of PISA. When we look at the results of Singapore, and we find for the Singaporean students that their share of top performers in at least one subject is extremely high compared to other nations. So they have 39% of their students at the highest level of the top performers at PISA. And the question is, why is this? Are there more gifted students in Singapore, or is there something about their school system or how parents teach their children? Why do they have, for example, much more than students at the top level, let's say, than the United States? Only 13.3 level in the United States. Are there 3 times more gifted students in Singapore? Certainly not. Something in this environment is different, of course. We can look at other examples. I want to give you now historic examples. This is the country Italy, the heart of Europe. Italy has around 60 million citizens. And I asked you, do you know any Italian person of the last, let's say, 100 years who is really, really outstanding, and you would maybe call this person a genius. So I'm not sure if you know somebody, but I'm sure you know somebody from Florence in the 16th century. There were only 80,000 citizens there, but look at some of these citizens. They include Leonardo da Vinci. They include Michelangelo, Machiavelli, Botticelli, or Donatello, the sculptor. So how is this possible that we do not know really outstanding Italians, 60 millions nowadays, but within 40, 50 years in Florence, only 80,000 people, we know so many. Can even look at this example. This is Greece, the modern Greece. It has more than 10 million citizens nowadays. And the classic Athens had only 30,000 citizens. But look who was among them. Just take a look at the left one. This is Socrates, one of the most famous philosophers ever. Do you know anybody from Greece from the last 100 years with such a reputation? You can look also at the others, of course, like Herodotus or Thucydides. They are also very, very famous. But another one at this time was Plato. If you are, for example, interested in literature, you know certainly also Sophocles or Aristophanes, Aeschylus. Maybe you are interested in other fields, like in astronomy. Anaxagoras was the first one who recognized that the sun is something like a fireball, that the moon consists of rocks similar to the rocks on Earth. He explained the different phases of the moon and so on. So there were many important and really famous people among these 30,000, including, for example, you can see other names. This is one of my personal heroes. He was a sculptor, Praxiteles. He was the most renowned of the Attic sculptors. And you see his name, Praxiteles, when we are talking today about practice. You find this word in his name. And for me, the greatest hero, Aristotle. My first book on philosophy was written by him. My parents bought it for me, and I loved it. So only 30,000 people within a small period of time produced more geniuses than maybe most of the countries in the world, and certainly more than modern Greece today. How is this possible? We call this golden ages. Golden ages. And this is one of the guys who was very interested in the golden ages, and I quote him. He asked, why are some periods and places so astonishingly more productive than the rest? It is intellectually embarrassing that this is almost never posed squarely. We simply ask all the time about gifted individuals, but we are not able to explain such a phenomenon like Florence in Italy with only 80,000 citizens, or Athens in ancient Greece back then with only 30,000 citizens. What makes this possible? Should we not take a closer look to the environment? Do not need to look at nations. We can also look at simple institutions. For example, this is Meadowmount School of Music in Westport, New York. It's a small school, but there students cover a year's worth of material in just 7 weeks. A 500% increase in learning velocity. And some students of them became world famous, like Yo-Yo Ma, Joshua Bell, Jack Perlman, or Pinchas Zuckerman. So how is this possible that this small school produces such geniuses? We all know. Or look at this tennis club. They have only in the winter one gym hall. This is Spartak Tennis Club in Moscow, Russia. They have in recent years produced more top 20 women players than the entire United States. Just one tennis club. Let's look at Beijing, number 8 high school. They produced more gold medalists in the academic mathematics Olympiads than the entire USA. How is this possible? Is this really only about gifted students, or is this more about gifted environments? And when it is about gifted environments, what characterizes these gifted environments? What makes these environments so unique? We think that such gifted environments are characterized by the richness of learning resources that they provide. And of course, now you want to ask, learning resources, can you be more specific, Professor Ziegler? Yes, I can, and I will. Shortly, I will share with you now our very first attempt, theoretical attempt, social hopes. What are social hopes? Look here. This is a park, a nice park, and this is a bench in a park. This bench has some attributes. You can do something with this bench. And this is called the objective action space, whatever we can really do with this bench. For example, we can lie down on the bench and take a sleep, a short nap. You can also sit on the bench and read. So this is also possible to do on the bench. What else is possible? For example, we can use a bench to do some sports. What else? For example, we can meet with friends and just exchange some messages with other friends with them on this bench. We can talk, we can date on such a bench, or simply meet with other people and whatever we do. So this bench allows for many, many actions. And all the actions which are possible there are, this is called, they are defining the objective action space. But there is also a so-called normative action space. Things you should do on this bench and things you should not do. Of course, the bench is a multifunctional thing. You can do many things at a bench, but there are also very clear rules what you should not do at a bench. Let's look here at some examples. You should not destroy it, or when you look at this photo in the center, you should not molest any people, or here you should be nice to people, not scare them, these people. There are other examples. You should not litter around, no violence, and so on. Or, for example, here, you should not disturb other people, give them their peace, give them quietness. So again, in this situation, there are things you can do at the bench, the objective action space, and there are things you should or should not do at the bench. This is called the normative action space. And we can apply this concept to learning. You can ask for any situation of our life, when we learn in this situation, this is the objective learning space. Is learning now possible, or is learning now not possible? I hope that I can share something with you that learning is now in this very situation possible for you in the objective action space. And we can also ask for any situation in our life. When you attend a conference, when you take a taxi, or you are on the bus, or you are in a classroom at school, wherever, we can also we'll ask ourselves, is learning regarded in this very situation as positive, negative, or neither nor? And we categorized now these overlaps, these intersections of objective action space and normative action space, and gave them names. And all the situations in which learning is possible and we regard it as positive learning, we call these situations learning sociotopes. What are examples of learning sociotopes? For example, a resource room at school. This is a chemistry resource room. It's especially designed for learning chemistry, to do some experiments, conduct experiments. This is the objective action space, but also in the normative action space, you are supposed to learn in these situations. This is called a learning sociotope. The same, for example, are music resource rooms. The instruments are already prepared for you. You just sit down, do music. It is possible in the objective action space, but you, for example, in the chemistry resource room, you couldn't do any music. In this resource room for music, you cannot do any chemistry. So it has always a certain purpose, such a situation, what you can do in the objective action space and what you cannot do in the objective action space. But in this case, again, the music resource room, in the normative action space, you are supposed to learn music. Let's move on to the next intersection of normative action space and objective action space. In situations where learning is possible, but it is regarded as negative. This is indeed possible. Such sociotopes are existent. We call them avoidance sociotopes. For example, in some German kindergartens, they don't want the children to learn. Their main objective is to play. Children should play. And if somebody would approach the children and want to teach the children, so this is not regarded as appropriate for this context of the kindergarten, in some of the German kindergartens. But sometimes in the classroom, if you are the best in the classroom, the best student, maybe the others look at you and they just don't want you to be better than them. And even such a classroom can be then an avoidance sociotope. The third possibility, when learning is possible, and we look at the intersection of with a normative action space, this would be called by us an infrastructural sociotope, when in the normative action space there is actually no norm. Learning is neither regarded as positive nor as negative. What are examples for such an infrastructural sociotope, where learning is in principle possible, but there are no norms existing regarding learning? Look here, for example, when we are talking about winter sports, skiing. So you can learn here skiing, but nobody says you have to. It's a possibility. You can make use of it, but you don't need to make use of it. Or for example, there are many books here. In principle, learning is possible, but maybe they don't want you to, or they don't have a norm that you need to learn here. It's simply up to you. If you like to, you take a book. If you don't like to, you don't take the book. Of course, in other contexts, like in libraries, this can become a learning sociotope when there's a norm that you read there. So, but now let's turn to other objective action spaces, those in which learning is not possible. And if it is not possible, but still learning is regarded as positive, we call it a thematic social talk. So just suppose this is your daughter in the school, and the other girl says the biology lesson will certainly be terrible. You would want this other girl walking up the stairs with her daughter saying something like, wow, I'm looking forward to the biology lesson. Now biology is valued, learning in biology is valued, so this becomes a thematic social talk. They cannot learn directly on these stairs, but still it is regarded as positive. But there are also situations in which learning is not possible, but learning is also in addition regarded as negative. For example, at a party, if you want to start a discussion at a party, let's say about mathematics, others say to you, are you crazy? Enjoy yourself, please, not now talking about mathematics. You cannot learn in this situation, it's too noisy, and people don't want you to learn something in this situation. Or we already had this example. This is also then an antagonistic social talk when this other girl is something negatively saying about biology. For example, the biology lesson will certainly be terrible. And then we have one intersection left. Learning is not possible, and it's not regarded as positive or negative in the normative action space. Examples are, for example, swimming. They cannot learn for school in this situation, and learning for school is neither regarded positive or negative. Of course, we can also look at this social talk, this swimming pool, as a social talk for learning swimming. And then it might be very different. It can be a learning social talk for swimming. You can swim, and it's valued, the learning, the improvement in swimming. So with regard to swimming, it can be a learning social talk. With regard to mathematics in school, it's a learning social talk. Also here, the stadium, it's too noisy. So, and what this guy here cheering for his team, what this guy is thinking about mathematics, we simply don't know in this case. So these are again the intersections. And let me show you how important this is to categorize the environments of persons like this. This is now a study we conducted. Teachers of many school classes nominated in their classroom the best student in class regarding school achievement. And they nominated also a high potential student, but this student only showed average achievements. So from the perspective of the teachers, both students had the same talent, but one lived up to his talents or her talents, the other one not. Are there any differences with regard to the social topes they live in? What we did then was to give them such a timetable, their families and the children, and they filled in whatever they are doing on Monday. So this is German. Here, Montag means Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so on. So from 0 to 7 hours or so, probably sleeping. Then they have breakfast. Then they go to school. In the afternoon, they meet with a friend and so on, whatever they do. But then we also asked for each entry in this timetable, is learning possible in this situation? So now we learn something about the objective action spaces, and is learning positively valued or negatively valued on neither nor. And this is, we get some information about the normative action space. And then we simply sum up at the time they are in the learning, social topes, the infrastructural social topes, and so on. And you can think, what is the difference between students who are the best students in their classroom and students who are average in their performance but have the same potential in the opinion of their teachers? So, what about learning social topes? Are the best students more often in learning social topes, meaning in situations where learning is possible and it is regarded as positive? You see here the result, the best student at the left, the high potential, but average achieving student at the right. Interestingly, the high potential average student has spent in the average a little bit more time in learning social topes, but the difference is not statistically significant. So for us in research, they are on the same level. So no difference with regard to time spent in learning social topes. What about avoidance social topes? Time spent in situations where learning is possible, but the others don't like it. Or you have the feeling you should not learn in this situation, even if it is possible. And you find here the best students never ever experience such a negative situation to their learning, but the average achieving students, even if they have a high potential, they experience this much more often. For example, let's say a teacher had been sick, there was a free lesson, they could do whatever they want, and the best students never experienced that they wanted to learn and the other talked negatively about it. But the high potential students, they made this bad experience. Then let's look at situation when learning is possible, but it's neither regarded as positive or negative, so-called infrastructural social topes, like just sitting on a bench below a tree. What can you do there? You can listen to music, you can read. And you see here, the best students, they receive many more situations as situations in which they can, in principle, learn. In principle, riding on the bus, riding on a train, for example. These are situations when these best students recognize, yes, I can learn in this situation, but high potentials do not see this, that this is possible. So this is again a significant difference. Now take a look at a situation when learning is not possible, but it's valued by the people you are with. For example, you can talk at home, at dinner with your parents about school, and your parents value school, are interested in the learning of you. And you see here also a significant difference that the best students, they live in environments in which learning is more valued than the high potential students with average abilities, average achievements. Now let's move on to situations where learning is not possible, but it is regarded as negative. We call that antagonistic social topes. And you see here again a significant difference. The best students spend less time in these unfriendly, learning unfriendly environments than the high potential students with average achievements. Then the last, we are talking now about situations where learning is not possible, but you can do something else in this situation, like for example swimming or so. And you know, they are talking about gifted students, they have an overload of activities, they are doing sports, they are learning music, instruments, and music instrument and so on. And you find here the best students are even a little bit more in competitive social topes, but again, this difference is not significant. So spending time in situations where learning is not positive, or a little bit more time in these social topes, doesn't harm learning of the gifted students. Again, here, this is a summary. In 4 social topes, we find differences regarding avoidance social topes and antagonistic social topes. The best students are less often in these social topes, and they're more often in infrastructural social topes and thematic social topes. So it makes a difference in which environments they live. May I remind you of this quote: not only do individuals defend their potential to attain extraordinary accomplishments, but also environments defend their potential to make extraordinary accomplishments possible. And let's talk about one weakness of this social tope approach. It was well enough to explain some of the differences between, for example, gifted students who live up to their potential and those who do not live up to their potential. But we do not differentiate within social topes. All social topes of a certain type had been considered as having the same effects. And this cannot be true. Not every, let's say, chemistry classroom is as effective as another one. Some are more effective, some are less effective. So we need to find a means to differentiate between these. And this is why we invented the concepts of educational and learning capital. They help us to distinguish between more effective environments and less effective environments. Indeed, educational and learning capital are analytical categories for estimating the learning potential of environments, and they are about learning resources. Resources are generally defined as all material and immaterial means that can be used to achieve goals. We are today talking about learning, so we are talking about learning goals, in particular on a learning pathway to excellence. And we have to answer 2 questions when we want to find out what resources are important. First, does an individual possess personal resources sufficient for taking advantage of the learning opportunities present with her or his environment? And these personal resources are termed learning capital. So it's not enough that I have resources around me. I need to access them and use them. And do I have the personal resources to access them? But I have also, of course, to ask, does the environment provide sufficient resources for facilitating successful individual learning processes? And we call these environmental resources educational capital. And I will soon classify them. But again, we have 2 kinds of learning resources. Endogenous learning resources are the learning resources within the person. We call them learning capital because it's about the learning of the individual. And we have the resources around the individual in the environment. We call them exogenous, these learning resources, or educational capital, because you can use them to educate the individual. Did traditional gifted education talk about learning resources, endogenous learning resources and exogenous learning resources, respectively learning capital and educational capital? Yes, indeed, they did. So you ask expert, for example, what resources did they talk about? And schools for the gifted, teachers specialized in gifted education and enrichment programs can be exogenous resources in traditional gifted education, endogenous resources, intelligence, creativity, learning strategies. If you ask me, I would give you another categorization, which I want to share with you now. Educational capital and learning capital, the exogenous resources in the environment, educational capital, economic, cultural, social, infrastructural, didactic, and within the individual to make use of the environment, organismic, actional, telic, episodic, attentional. And I walk you now through the 10 capitals. Let's look first at the environmental resources, the educational capital. And let me introduce it in this way. So I show you now two boys from Poland. And let's assume they have really the very same talent. In terms of talent, they are identical. The only difference is their economic educational capital, the means their parents can use for their education. These are now some examples of what Adam's parents could afford in contrast to Lukas' parents. They can send their son, Adam, to a summer school. They buy him a chemistry box. He can make some experiments in chemistry. They send him to a language course, holidays in Great Britain, so he can practice his English. And they pay him piano lessons and many things more. So I think you agree, even if Adam and Lukas have the same talents, just this difference in economic educational capital might give Adam a head start. So probably he will develop his talents a little bit better than Lukas. And they can send him also to an expensive private school. So economic educational capital is every kind of wealth, possession, money, or valuables that can be invested in the initiation and maintenance of educational and learning processes. So meet with me these two girls from Hungary, from Europe, Anna and Nora. And again, they have the same talents, no difference here, but very different cultural educational capital. Examples of what Anna experienced in contrast to Nora. Parents have an academic background and envision for Anna an academic career. Parents talk frequently at home with her about school and want their daughter among the best at school. Not so. Nora's parents, Anna's friends, they like learning. Anna's teachers are highly motivated. So Anna lives in a much more learning-friendly environment, and cultural educational capital includes here value systems, thinking patterns, models, and the like, which can facilitate or hinder the attainment of learning and educational goals. Let's keep this on. From Denmark, you see here Victor and Carl. And they have, again, the same talents, but a different social educational capital. These are now examples of Victor's social environment. His mother stayed at home to raise her boy, a real tiger mom. Victor's families are all academics. Victor has a personal mentor, a retired math teacher. Victor is a member of the math club at his school, and the others teach him mathematics and help him. So who will end better in mathematics? Who will be more successful in mathematics? We think Victor, even if the talents are the same. Social educational capital includes all persons and social institutions that can directly or indirectly contribute to the success of learning and educational processes. We can also look at the infrastructural educational capital. And here, these girls from Ireland, Emily and Lucy, again, they have the same talents, but here are now examples of Emily's environments. They have more than 1,000 books at home, not so Lucy. One room, a quiet place to work, stimulating toys and learning material at home, excellent school nearby, library around the corner. So even if the two girls have the same talent, but a different infrastructure, we can assume that Emily will develop better. Infrastructural educational capital relates to materially implemented possibilities for action that permit learning and education to take place. Now, let's change the domain. Now we look at soccer, football. These are two boys from Portugal, Tiago and Rodrigo. Who will be the better football player when they are adults? Now here are some examples of Tiago's didactic environment. His father teaches physical education. Tiago plays for one of the best Portuguese football clubs, and his coach has a training license for football and develops individual training routines. His football club employs a physiotherapist for the youth teams, and he receives health education. So again, maybe they have the same talents in football, but Tiago has a better didactic environment, which is defined as assembled know-how involved in the design and improvement of educational and learning processes. We have now looked at the environmental resources, but we can also look, of course, at the personal resources. What needs a person to make full use of the resources within the environment? And again, we have 5 different capitals here. So, for example, organismic learning capital is important. Think of these two girls in Switzerland, Europe, Mia and Lena. These are now examples of Lena's organismic capital compared to Mia's. She has regular sleeping time in a quiet room, no media use the last 60 minutes prior to sleep. Her mother puts emphasis on healthy nutrition, no health problems worth mentioning, and her preferred learning time when she is in her best physical shape at day. Again, even if the talents are the same, we would think that probably Mia will have a better talent development. Organismic learning capital consists of the physiological and constitutional resources of a person. There's another capital we call educational learning capital. Meet these two boys from Croatia, Ivo and Milan. Here are some examples of Ivo's actional learning capital. He has a much better command of his mother tongue, including an active vocabulary of double size. He had taken 2 courses in learning strategies. He possesses already advanced skills in searching for specific information, and he's a skilled reader. He, for example, had some courses in skilled reading. Again, even if the talents are the same, but he has Ivo has a better actional learning capital. We would expect a better development for Ivo. In essence, actional learning capital means the action repertoire of a person, the totality of actions they are capable of performing. Look at telic learning capital, which you can translate into motivation. These are 2 girls from the country of Romania, Elena and Liana. Again, they have the same talents, but examples of Elena's goal system, of her motivation. She wants to have an academic career. She is sure about this. She likes the company of peers who are learning oriented. She enjoys in her leisure time reading very much, and she doesn't like to party, in contrast to Liana. Again, even if the talents are the same, we would expect a better talent development for Elena. Telic learning capital comprises the totality of a person's anticipated goal states that offer possibilities for satisfying their needs. There are 2 more to go. Episodic learning capital. These are 2 boys from Slovenia, Mark and Chakov. And again, they have the same talents, but these are now examples of Chakov's experiences with learning, all the learning episodes he experienced, His mother read to him books from early on. He watched his family members frequently reading. In kindergarten, he learned early math in a playful way. Learning progress was reinforced by his social environment. His elementary school teacher provided a safe learning environment. So all his experiences with learning were much more friendly. This episodic learning capital is the positive and negative experiences associated with learning. And now the last capital, attentional learning capital. These are two girls from Sweden, Ella and Julia. And now you find some examples of Julia's experiences with learning. Julia has problems to focus during learning. Effective learning time is only 32%. So when she learns 100 minutes, she is actually only 32 minutes learning. The rest she is sitting around. She loves to play computer games, spend times for other activities, and she loves to hang out with friends. So Ella here is much more focused on learning, puts much more attention to learning, and we can assume that she will be more successful in learning than Julia. So we can look at these capital on all levels of systems. You remember, we can look at the individual plus the family, individual plus the family plus the teacher, how they make use of the environment. We can even look at nations, and these are just some examples of questions when you want to analyze a nation. Has this nation more educational capital or the other nation? We started analysis with Arabian countries and finished it. Now we are continuing now with countries from Latin America. Look, for example, at infrastructural educational capital. Are there special infrastructures that talents can use, special schools, libraries, support centers, universities, and so on? And then we can analyze in the next step how the capitals are distributed among these universities and so on. We can also ask for the learning capitals of nations. This nation, let's say Singapore with PISA, you remember that, offers an effective school system, but can the individuals make use of the school system? Look at the organismic learning capital. Is care taken to ensure that talents are physically fit and healthy enough to engage in and profit from demanding learning resources, and so on. So we can analyze it. I simply invite you to take a look at our publications on educational and learning capital. We compared, for example, what better predicts school achievements, IQ, or educational and learning capital. What we found is in all our studies, educational and learning capital is a much better predictor than, for example, IQ. And I come now already to the summary of my presentation. Just 3 points. I think paying attention, much more attention to the environment is crucial for talent development. We focused too much on the talents and neglected the environment in our research. Regarding the social jobs, talents should have access to learning social jobs, thematic social jobs, and infrastructural social jobs, and will hopefully never spend time in antagonistic social jobs and avoidance social jobs. So when parents come to our counseling center, we give them the timetable and analyze what are their experiences in their life, the gifted children, the gifted students. But a weakness of the social job approach is that it doesn't distinguish between social jobs of the same type. So you need to analyze social jobs also with regard to the educational and the learning capital. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you for Professor Ziegler's excellent speech. You give us some important ideas just like the environment is very important, we need to give gifted students the good learning environment. And the educational capitals from government or from national is very important for students from low-income family or some poor family. So maybe we have 2 or 3 minutes can ask questions. So anyone have question to ask Professor Ziegler?
Professor Yu, there's a comment sharing of opinions on in the chat box.
Okay.
It's from Dr. Hong.
Yes.
So, should I answer this with the digital resources?
Yeah.
For example, environment is important, but there are so many digital resources. Is it not bad for children? Yes and no. Actually, when you look at attentional capital, time spent for learning, the computer, digital resources can take a lot of time away from the learning, but there is also indication now, there were 2 or 3 very big meta-analyses that show, for example, that spending time in the internet can improve the intelligence of students. So this was very surprising. For a long time, we had assumed that you will suffer with your IQ when you spend too much time in the internet. But it seems there are now also some benefits. This is something, I'm not a media psychologist here, for which they need still to develop many educational strategies, how to use it. In my opinion, I think there are many chances and opportunity connected to digital resources. And what we did, for example, if you are interested in this kind of research, we started a global talent mentoring program. So we include the best talents, or we try to find the best of every 5 million citizens in this world and connect them to the best mentors in this world. And of course, they use digital resources. So this is very hard to answer right now because we are starting to develop the programs, not we specifically, but researchers in the whole world, how we best make use of digital resources.
And one audience said how to identify the social tops.
Yes, actually, yes, there are resources. There are resources right now, but I would suggest go straight to the educational and learning resources. There are checklists already, and there are questionnaires for it. If you drop me an email, I can send you the checklist as well as the questionnaire, and then you can simply use it. And what we found, if you only learn about the IQ and then you hear here, it's an IQ of 132. What are you doing now? You have no idea what you are going to do. But if we look at the profile of the resources, less social capital, problems with the actional learning capital and so on, then you can specifically address it. Just drop me an email and I will send you the material.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for Professor Ziegler. And it's so pretty that you can come to Taiwan and join us the physical conference. But I think we will see you so soon.
Yes. Hopefully we will see us very soon. our project will be funded, our joint German-Taiwan project, yes. We hope for news energy.
Okay.
Okay, so this is the end of this session. Thank you, Professor Ziegler. I hope we can see you soon in Taiwan or somewhere in the world in person. And okay, also we would like to thank Professor Yu to host this session. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of today's session. Thank you for coming. So I wish you a good evening, good afternoon, and maybe good morning. I hope I will see you tomorrow for the last day of our conference.